You're very welcome to the second CPSMA webinar devised to support boards of management in the effective management of their schools. This series of webinars is based on the national module of training, the board as a corporate entity. Our first webinar explained the functions and responsibilities of a board as set out in legislation. This webinar is designed to clarify individual roles and to assist board members in discharging their collective responsibility for the management of the school, subject to their accountability to the patron and to the regulations of the Department of Education and Skills. As pointed out in our earlier training webinar, all boards of management of primary schools are required to adhere to the provisions of the Governance Manual for Primary Schools 2019 to 2023. This is the board members' go-to document, and it is important that each member of the board is provided with a copy and that they take the time to become familiar with its contents. It is important to be clear that although board members have come to the board by different routes, nominated by parents, teachers, the patron, or the wider community, they do not sit on the board to advance the interests of any single group. So let's have a look at the 4 constituent groups that make up the Board of Management and explore the individual roles. Your bishop, as leader of the Catholic community in the diocese, is the patron of your school and has ultimate responsibility for it. The patron appoints 2 nominees to the Board of Management. As a direct appointee of the patron, the authority of the chairperson derives from this appointment, as does the chairperson's responsibility to lead the board in discharging the statutory obligations that we discussed in webinar 1. The patron may delegate much of the responsibility for the running of the school to the Board of Management, but the board must consult the patron on a number of specific issues. For example, the patron appoints independent assessors for recruitment processes and also sanctions the appointments of teachers, including principal and externally appointed deputy principals and SNAs. The patron should be consulted on any issue related to the school building, for example, an extension or additional accommodation, all major renovations or alteration of grounds, the use of premises for other groups, amalgamation of schools, etc. The board has a statutory obligation to uphold and be accountable to the patron for so upholding the characteristic spirit of the school. The Diocesan Advisor for Primary Religious Education supports religious education in primary schools through a range of activities, including the delivery of in-service for teachers, as well as school visits to advise and support teachers regarding the Grow in Love programme. The patron is entitled to request any or all of the following policies and documents: the Child Safeguarding Statement, the original of which should have been sent to the patron; the Admissions Policy, which was reviewed in 2020 and sent to the patron for approval; the Code of Behaviour, the Anti-Bullying Policy, or indeed any element of the school plan. The patron may also request minutes of Board of Management meetings. As already mentioned, the school is required to submit its annual accounts to the Financial Support Services Unit, the FSSU, but notwithstanding this, the patron is entitled to request school accounts. The patron will also receive a copy of the school's whole school evaluation and copies of other evaluations carried out by the inspectorate. The patron, with the minister's consent, may remove a member of the Board of Management or dissolve a board in accordance with Section 16 of the Education Act. The school principal or acting principal will always be a member of the Board of Management. Even though the teacher nominee is elected by the teaching staff, he or she does not represent the teaching staff at board level. The role of the teacher nominee is to bring a teacher's view or a teacher's perspective to any board discussion. Any staff issue should be brought to the principal in the first instance, and it is not the role of the teacher nominee to raise any issue with the board on behalf of the teaching staff. Note, a nominee, not a representative. 2 parents elected by the general body of parents one being a mother, the other a father. As with the teacher nominee, the mother's nominee and father's nominee do not represent the parent body. They were nominated to bring a mother's view and a father's view to board deliberations. A clear understanding of the corporate responsibilities of each board member will stave off difficulties, particularly if board members are approached by members of their electorate to bring issues to the board. Again, note, nominees, not representatives. The first 6 nominees will then nominate 2 extra members from the community to complete the board of 8 members, having regard to the skills that are complementary to the board's skill requirements, a consciousness of having a gender balance on the board, an interest in education and its promotion, but would not normally be parents of pupils attending the school, and having an understanding of and commitment to the Catholic ethos, in addition to having a commitment to the community and parish served by the school. So what is your contribution as a board member? Time is a valuable commodity, and board members give their time freely. You bring your experience, be it life experience or professional experience. You have a commitment to the school and you support the school community. You bring your opinions and ideas, informed by your role on the board, whether it's as patron nominee, principal, teacher, parent, or community nominee. All members of the board act collectively. No one person has all the answers. Members who have served in a previous term of a board of management would bring their own experience to bear on the new term, but it's also really important to recognise that new members bring fresh ideas, new thinking, and new experiences. So this is an extremely important extract from the governance manual. It's section 8 and it relates to confidentiality. Again, it emphasises that board members do not take instruction from the group that elected them. In relation to confidentiality, a rule of thumb is that everything discussed at a board meeting is completely confidential. At the end of a board meeting, the board will decide what may be reported and by whom. This will be included in the board's agreed report, which is designed to support good communication to parents, staff, and the school community, and we'll look at the agreed report in our next webinar. Another important point to make at this point is that decisions that are made by the board, whether by consensus or by vote, are decisions of the board as a body corporate. If an individual member of the board is opposed to such a decision, they must accept it and must not publicly criticise or make any negative public comment about it, irrespective of their own personal views on the matter. If you recall from our first webinar, the overarching duty of the board is to manage the school on behalf of the patron and for the benefit of the students and their parents, and to provide or cause to be provided an appropriate education for each student at the school for which that board has responsibility. This overview places the pupil firmly at the centre of the board's duty. Teachers and support staff work in partnership with parents to provide and support that learning environment. They are supported by the Board of Management, the patron, the school, and the parish. And then on a national level, they're supported by the Department of Education and Skills and other agencies, for example, the National Council for Special Education, TUSLA, the Child and Family Agency, among others. So let's have a look at the roles. There are official roles of the Board of Management members, and we're going to explore them over the next few slides. The official ones being the chairperson, the principal teacher, the recording secretary, and the treasurer. But as well as that, we're going to look at some other tasks that may be delegated. As referenced in our first webinar, the chairperson is a direct appointee of the patron. Section 10 of the Governance Manual sets out the role of the chair and states that where practicable, the chairperson should bear no direct relationship to any serving staff member or board member. Neither the principal nor the elected teacher nominee are eligible for appointment as chairperson or acting chairperson. The chairperson is first among equals but has specific duties. The chairperson convenes board meetings and sets the agenda, chairs meetings as well, and we're going to look at that in greater detail in our next webinar. The chairperson reports to the board on actions relating to board business that are taken between meetings. The chair is correspondent with the Department of Education and Skills, but can delegate responsibility to others in relation to correspondence in his or her absence. The chairperson is normally the chairperson of the interview board for recruitment purposes, but there is a separate training session for chairpersons and principals in relation to recruitment. In relation to capital projects, it is the chairperson who seeks the prior approval of the patron or the trustees. Finally, the chairperson signs declarations on behalf of the board for the appointment of staff, signs the annual census, which confirms pupil numbers, etc., also signs agreements in relation to the approved use of the school premises, etc. Cheque payments must be authorised by 2 of 3 nominated signatories of the board, one being the chairperson, and this also applies to online banking. CPSMA has published a guide for chairpersons of boards of management of Catholic schools, and a copy of this guide was sent to all of our member schools. So moving on to the principal and the principal's role. The principal is the leader of learning and is responsible for the day-to-day management of the school, and the principal is accountable to the board for that management. The role of the principal is set out in the Education Act of 98 and the Education Amendment Act of 2012. And the only circular that sets out the responsibilities and the duties of a principal teacher is Circular 16 of 73. So while the role of the principal has evolved considerably since this circular was published, it still hasn't been superseded. So in summary, the principal's role includes being the leader of learning, who sets objectives for the school and monitors the achievements of these objectives, creates an environment which is conducive to learning and which promotes the professional development of staff, encourages the involvement of parents in the education of pupils in the school, and is central to carrying out the functions of the school and the board and the implementation of the board's policies. So the recording secretary, where the recording secretary is the school principal. In many cases, it is the principal who acts as secretary to the board of management, and a broad outline of the duties of the principal who acts as a secretary to the board of management is set out in Circular 79 of 2007. However, the list of duties outlined in the circular is not exhaustive, and the Board of Management may include other duties as decided by the board from time to time, and they include the following: setting the agenda in consultation with the chairperson, issuing notification of meetings, preparing correspondence for the chairperson, recording the minutes of meetings, filing the minutes in a safe place, providing members of the board with latest relevant books, circulars, publications. But it's important to remember that the chairperson remains as correspondent for the board unless he or she nominates the principal to act as correspondent where necessary. In circumstances where the principal of a school does not act as secretary to a board, the board then elects a recording secretary from amongst its members. The duties of the recording secretary are confined to setting the agenda in consultation with the chairperson and principal, keeping minutes in an appropriate form, retained in a safe place, and made available on request to representatives of the patron, the department, or trustees. And finally, recording in the minutes the decisions reached at meetings, including the numbers of those voting for and against a motion. The treasurer. The board elects a treasurer from amongst its members. The chairperson, principal or teacher nominee cannot be elected treasurer. The treasurer's role is to keep the school accounts and to present a treasurer's report at each meeting of the board. And the production of such a report at each meeting allows the whole board to make informed decision in relation to school finances. and there'll be a separate webinar on school finances and the role of the Treasurer. So, other tasks that may be delegated. Tasks and responsibilities that may be delegated to members of the board according to their interests and available time could include, for example, the appointment of a safety officer who would have responsibility for reviewing the Board of Management's health and safety statement. Other tasks could include the maintenance of appropriate security and fire alarm systems, or coordinating a list of out-of-hours key holders for the school in the event of alarm activation or access required for repairs and maintenance, or liaising with groups who hire the school premises in relation to security, arranging keys, etc. The parameters of any of these delegated roles should be agreed by the Board of Management, and they should be reviewed regularly. So thank you for viewing this training webinar. If you have any query at all in relation to any aspect of the content, please contact our advice line. The contact details are as follows. CPSMA education advisors are available at any stage from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. to speak with school principals and chairpersons to answer any further specific queries. In our next webinar, we will look at Board of Management meetings.